For most of human history, the masses were poor and child labor was the norm. Poverty is what causes children to enter the workforce. When widespread wealth is created and poverty is eliminated, parents send their children to school instead of factories. In the late 1800s in the United States, there was massive wealth creation for the ordinary person thanks to a thriving free enterprise system. Wages were increasing, working conditions kept improving, hours worked kept declining, and the movement away from child labor happened on its own and voluntarily. Before national laws that prohibited child labor in the 1930s, only around 6% of children ages 10 to 15 were working. Over 70% of those children worked in agriculture. Most child agriculture jobs were on family farms helping their parents. If you subtract these workers, the child labor rate for 10 to 15-year-olds was around 2%. Child labor was already an endangered species and almost totally eliminated by the time the federal government started regulating it. Sure, many states had already enacted child labor laws before 1930, but these were not the cause for decreased child labor rates. Some of these laws merely limited hours worked, not actual labor force participation. There is little evidence to suggest that child labor laws significantly impact labor rates. To give a contemporary example, the minimum working age in Costa Rica is 15, yet over 40% of children working are under 15. There are rich and poor countries that have child labor laws, but the laws seem to only impact labor rates in rich countries. This is because of wealth differences and not the actual law. In developing countries, child labor rates are so high because of widespread poverty. The solution to child labor is wealth creation, and there has never been a system in all of human history that has been so invariably successful as capitalism at lifting the masses out of poverty. During economic development, it actually harms children to have a total ban on their labor. These bans come from the domestic government or by foreign governments who refuse to trade with a nation that allows child labor. When these prohibitions occur, children and their families are still poor. So children move into very dangerous and exploitative industries such as prostitution and other black market jobs. And these industries provide no legal protections for the children. Child labor laws harm the very people they attempt to help. Poverty is the actual problem at play here. Child labor is just a symptom. There's a reason why 90% of economists support free trade. Free trade and free markets create wealth and solve the poverty issue. And wealth increases the quality and quantity of life. I should also add that I support allowing child labor in theory, but potentially not in practice. Children cannot fully consent, so you would need both the child's consent to work and their parents' consent. Obtaining true consent from both of these groups might prove difficult in practice. Notwithstanding, in practice, child labor laws actually make things worse. Studies have shown that children get lower wages after prohibitions on child labor have been enacted. They now have to get other jobs, particularly black market jobs, that pay less money. Families respond by having more of their children enter the labor force in order to make up the money that they've lost. This actually leads to an increase in child labor after there are laws prohibiting it. It's easy for those in wealthy countries to support laws against child labor without thinking about the situation below the surface. Utopias do not exist. We need to be aware of what's actually going on in impoverished countries. No one wants children to have to work, but we need to acknowledge the consequences that child labor laws have on the welfare of children. Child workers are not abstractions. They are real people, and laws have real consequences for them.